Even though we are in a crypto winter, not everyone thinks that this is the end of the world for the crypto market. We are a strong community of nerds alive on this planet. I believe so, because we have a very strong case for Bitcoin being a hedge against inflation or recession, of course, yet to be tested. Experts see Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general still having a lot of financial potential. The potential of this asset class is sourced from the same reason that stocks do. When prices go down, long-term investors see it as a golden opportunity to buy. Pretty simple, pretty clean concept. Now, whether or not Bitcoin is hedge against inflation is yet to be tested or being tested as we speak. So far, Bitcoin is showing some reasonable sustainability, but we shall see. So we may not know yet whether or not Bitcoin is a hedge against inflation, but we do have a very strong point here. Printing money devalues a currency. Also, when it comes to asset inflation, the Fed has been doing quantitative easing or QT, which means that it has been putting money into the markets to force banks to give out more loans and make the economy even more risky. Now, the question is, what's next for Bitcoin, and is it truly a wealth building opportunity in 3 decades? And if it is, how? To find the answer to this question, let's look deeper into what backs crypto markets so strongly to push it through extreme troubled economic times thanks to high inflation, high interest rate, and a recession almost upon us. B, what is contributing to crypto price dips? C, what is Fed up to and where are we actually heading towards? And D, what choices do Biden administration have? But before we get started, please hit that like button, turn on that notification bell so that each time I upload a new video, YouTube can notify you. In case you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. So what backs crypto markets so strongly to push it through extreme troubled economic times? The belief in cryptocurrencies run by blockchain projects doesn't come out of thin air. There's much more to blockchain than we may even think of. It's called disruptive technology for a reason. So what's so special about this truly disruptive technology? The underlying features represent massive improvements for commerce. For example, there will be a point in time where global businesses using this technology will be able to operate faster and cheaper. Not only that, we are also looking into improved security, transparency, and inclusion. Now, many of us would compare the birth and evolution of blockchain and cryptocurrency with the dot-com period. Let me remind you of a lesson we learned from that phenomenal period. Sure, the dot-com bubble bursted at some point. However, bubble bursting did not put the internet to an end. Similarly, no matter how cold the crypto winter seems today, it would not translate into the end of Internet 3.0 or blockchain or cryptocurrencies. But what is contributing to crazy crypto price dips? Needless to say, this crypto winter is obviously different from the previous ones, since this one comes in the midst of a global economic crisis. First, we saw a new genie coming out of the bottle, an excessive stimulus of trillions of dollars that were injected into the economy to fight against COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this genie had some company too, like supply chain shortages, rising inflation and interest rates, global food shortage, prevailing pandemic, and of course, the big wild card called Putin. Now, speaking of inflation, why did it even happen? Because when more money tries to buy the same amount of goods, higher the demand, higher the prices. As it turned out, crypto, along with most other speculative asset classes, had a big rise when the money printers started printing money. Now, as the US Federal Reserve raises interest rates to stop the highest inflation in decades, Bitcoin is on track to have its worst quarter ever. So unless Fed doesn't go dovish or softer, can we expect any good news? Not really. but I will continue to look for even more reasons to contributing to these crazy price dips. Now, crypto prices are indeed reacting to the fact that there was too much leverage in the system. So if I have to point strongly towards one reason, it is the current deleveraging that is causing these prices drop sharply. Remember the real estate crisis in 2008? That is exactly what is happening right now with crypto market. By the way, I have recently made this video where I'm forming a correlation between a resetting of housing market and global economy benefiting Bitcoin. It's a theory yet to be tested, of course, but do watch it out via the link on the top right of screen. The link would also be in the description box. Obviously, it will take a while for this structural damage to be fixed. In my opinion, it should take another 12 to 18 months to recover. I'm expecting Bitcoin between $60,000 and $100,000 by Q1 2024. Hopefully, current crisis would be much controlled by then. But what's more to 2024 for crypto market? Bitcoin halving, a major event in the life cycle of Bitcoin. Now, this event halves the miners' rewards and adding on to the competition and fueling the scarcity feature of Bitcoin embedded into it. Now, there is even more to this expected price surge by 2024. Most retail and institutional investors will include crypto in their diversified portfolios in the next 5 years. Lastly, I don't even need to tell you guys that regardless of the dips, institutions are buying heavy. But the question is, what makes me believe this is once in 3 decade money making opportunity? Because Fed is its own enemy. Now hear me out. I know my conspiracy theories are crazy, but there's no harm in hearing me out. I know, and you should know too, why Fed Reserve's current moves wouldn't let crypto market grow, and how would tables eventually turn in favor of crypto markets sooner than we may think. But let's have a look. What is Fed up to and where are we heading towards? I'll try to explain it in the most easiest way, although I'm not an expert or an economist by any means, not claiming anything like that. But I'll try to simplify because I know how confusing Fed is for me as a crypto trader and investor. So I'll speak from my perspective, a perspective of crypto trader and investor. But first, let's see what is the task of Fed Reserve. The Fed Reserve is tasked with achieving 2 goals: full employment and price stability. Now, both of these objectives are clearly influenced by the interest rate as well as the quantity of money that is accessible for spending and investing, also referred to as liquidity. And how would increasing interest rate damage liquidity? Increasing interest rates have a knock-on effect on the amount of available liquidity and overall economic activity. Additionally, the Fed Reserve exerts control over liquidity through the use of open market operations as well as through the purchase of government bonds and mortgages. The Fed Reserve seeks to curb economic activity and as a result of this, aims to flatten the inflation by tightening monetary policy to restrict liquidity. However, what Fed is well aware of yet turning its blind eye towards is that an ever-increasing debt ceiling, on the other hand, will present a fresh challenge for the Fed Reserve as it works to lower overall liquidity. And this is exactly where I want to bring you. What Fed Reserve had done by now is making too much money available for far too long, and at the same time whilst putting on government restrictions on production. Now, these restrictions were argued and believed to be essential for protection during the COVID-19 pandemic. Nevertheless, these restrictions turned out to be ineffective. But how have these restrictions been ineffective? Consider the similar infection and death rates across different states that imposed drastically different levels of restrictions. Now, let me put all this information into perspective for you. The current range for the Fed's interest rate is between 1.5 and 1.75%, and as of right now, the debt ceiling that used to be placed on the government is no longer in effect. The ceiling was meant to be a restriction on the total number of dollars that could be borrowed, nevertheless not intended to be a limit on the amount of money that could be paid back on debt. In this way, the US federal government would be able to borrow money at any interest rate. However, raising the limit on the government's borrowing capacity is now merely a formality that takes place on occasion. At this time, the yearly budget for the government is $6 trillion. By repeatedly increasing the limit, the government has the potential to boost liquidity, which, as I explained earlier, refers to the availability of money to any unspecified figure regardless of the interest rate that is established by the Federal Reserve, which leads to, you guessed it right, an increase in inflation. Now, you must understand two things here. Biden's administration, A, does not see current inflation a product of any additional expenditure, although everyone else can see it, and B, it believes that further increased spending may lower inflation. Remember the Build Back Better program aimed to lower inflation? This program would increase government spending by approximately $5 trillion over the course of 10 years. As a result, the government could try to spend its way out of the inflation problem. Now, this is in direct opposition to all of the fundamental economic ideas that are based on the supply and demand rules. But what choices do Biden administration have? Obviously, they want to stay relevant. They want to stay in power. They would do so by ridiculing Trump, of course. They would use the acceptance of transsexual, including transsexual education, plus supporting transitioning procedures for children, supporting late-term abortion, etc., etc. They would try to be persuasive that these issues are much more important than much lesser issues than inflation and recession. And what are the outcomes? At present, Fed Reserve is operating in a hawkish mindset because it is keen on suppressing inflation. However, it is not hard to imagine that market crashes would continue to crush the mainstream economy, which it most clearly will. And when that begins to fuel political easing, which it most surely would, the central bank will turn dovish once more. Both of these events are most likely to happen. After that, the economic situation in the world that will exist after the pandemic could rapidly become so risky that in the absence of other options for addressing them, the Fed Reserve and other central banks will return to the same policy framework that has been in place for the past decade and a half, very predictable, with interest rates remaining close to zero, and quantitative easing, sometimes also described as money printing, would become a norm. And this will serve as the basis for cryptocurrency market recovery. When should that happen? Sooner than we may realize. If you enjoyed watching my content, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, share this video and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to hearing your views, opinions in the comment section. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in my next video.